Evening, everyone. It's another edition of Gridiron Hub Live. It's Steve again, and I'm joined this evening by BAFA CEO Pete Ackerley. So, hi Pete, thank you for joining.
Good evening, Steve. Good evening, everybody.
So Pete's here, and I've really been looking forward to this one since we sort of confirmed last week. So, we've got a short amount of time with Pete, and what we sort of discussed was Pete coming on and talking us through the newly released 10-year vision that he's got for the sport. And Pete and I we met Pete earlier last week, didn't we? Had a very brief chat, and there's a couple of things that were mentioned in that I thought were quite insightful, and I sort of think would be good to get across in during this broadcast. And I'm really keen to him. Obviously, we didn't get into this 10-year plan piece. We talked quite broadly, didn't we? And sort of introduced ourselves. But yeah, so I suppose I wanted to frame that so that I'm going to be hearing a lot of this for the first time myself as Pete's going through it. We've got some visuals, some slides to show to sort of help. I suppose one, Pete structure what he's talking about, but two, you guys at home to sort of have some sort of visual reference. The way that we're going to do it, the format for this tonight, for this show, is that we're going to just focus on that 10-year plan. So Pete's going to be, talking us through it. I'll be jumping in and chipping in with, asking questions about the logic of it and how we got to certain things. If you've got questions, we always have interactive sessions. So if you've got questions and you're watching this, feel free to put them in the comments. But I'll only bring them in if they're actually on topic and they're relevant. We don't have all night to be able to go through every single thing that you've ever any issue or any idea you've got for BAFA. So we do have to stay quite focused on this, and so I just wanted to sort of get that out of the way so that people know what to expect. Pete, do you want to just quickly just sort of do a quick intro yourself and sort of say, why you wanted to do this and stuff before we get into it?
By all means, Steve. Thanks very much. Well, for those that I've not met, and there's quite a lot of those people, I'd hoped when I started 12 months ago to meet a lot of people while we were playing football. I suppose the biggest thing is, we didn't play, which is, the global pandemic and so on and so forth, probably not the ideal way to start a tenure as a chief exec for the first time of a governing body. However, what it has done is enabled us to have a really good look at inside the governing body for me as coming in. My background is the best part of 30 years working in sport at both local level, in county level of governing bodies, but the vast majority of the time at senior exec level with the England and Wales Cricket Board based at Lord's Cricket Ground, and latterly with the Football Association based at Wembley Stadium, St George's Park. I'm involved still in some football and cricket charities and bodies, and advising and guiding them. And as the first chief exec of British American football, absolutely delighted, honoured, and privileged to take this sport and start to look at, if you like, what's under the bonnet. And I've had a good 12 months to look what's under the bonnet. And I always said to the board when I first said, look, I'm not going to do anything for 12 months. Hopefully going to see a lot of football. I'm clearly able to do that, but equally get a real understanding of the sport, where it's at, and then probably more importantly, not look back too much. Yeah, have some wing mirrors on so you can keep looking in the wing mirrors, see what's behind, but actually looking forward and planning forward. And that's what I'll talk about tonight, really, is the long-term future. And as I say, it was incredibly exciting, and I say I'm incredibly privileged to sit in this chair and sit in this role to do that.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. And I mean, I always feel that there's like a ton of questions I could ask you, so I know that will be the same for the audience. But like I say, I do want to stay disciplined and sort of on topic for now. So, are you okay if we jump straight into it and start talking about it? So I'll get the front page up. But do you want to just sort of so what? Well, I suppose let's start with that. Why a 10-year plan? Why have you put this together? And what are you hoping from it?
Yeah, I think it is that. It's about hopes, aspirations, and long-term vision. I mean, people in the audience will work for organisations and companies and their own businesses where they have strategies and vision statements and all the usual business terminology. But the point of this is, rather than write what tends to happen in sport, is people write 3 and 4 year strategies, which are usually linked to a funding cycle from either a sponsor or government or a sports council or something like that. So you end up writing your strategy in business to fit someone else's agenda. And the whole point of this was to come in, look at British American football, and what I will say is what I've started to do here is listen, talk with, discuss with a whole plethora of individuals and groups over the last 12 months to create what I feel then is the understanding of what people are saying. And probably more importantly for me, with 30 years experience at senior level working in a governing body and in sport, this is what the sport needs. And this is British American football. You could apply the similar ideas to any sport or any activity. But the main thing I wanted to do was to really set out what is the why. And in strategies terms and business terms, people talk about, well, what's the why of the organization?
Yeah.
What's the how we do things, and the what's about what we do every time. And that's what I heard a lot of. I heard a lot of people say, what we should do is this, and what we should do is that. And that's all very relevant. But if we're going to bind the whole of British American football together in a single understood vision, that doesn't mean we all agree with every one of the hows or the whats. But if we all buy into the vision that, well, this is what our sport needs and our game needs, then the rest of it falls in and is part of the discussion and the consultation. So what I'm talking through tonight is more the why and the hows, and then some of the whats, but not the detail behind the whats. That will evolve over the next 6 months, three to 6 months. So what I heard more than anything was I was trying to understand what people believe what is the single biggest thing or 2 biggest things this sport needs to do, and understand its why. And don't get me wrong, I got a lot of advice and a lot of comment and a lot of people telling me a lot of things. Pretty much everybody, and they might not have used this word specifically, but we've just got to professionalize everything we do as a sport. We've just got it on and off the field. I don't mean that just in terms of players being paid or someone being paid. I mean professionalize our approach, professionalize what we do, professionalize how we behave, professionalize, because been around sport for 30 years. Government, Sport England, Scotland and Wales, commercial partners, you know what? They look at your sport and they don't just look at the headlines. They look at the culture and the values, and they look at where you're trying to take your sport, and they want to work in a partnership with you, not here's some money, crack on and do something else.
Right.
It's very much about us saying we're here now for the next 10 years. And we won't do it all in one go. And some of these things will take 10 years. Some of these things will only take 1 or 2 years.
Right.
And we'll amend some of them and we'll adjust some of them as we go. But everything we will come back to is the why. And that why is every time we look at our sport, are we professionalizing everything we do? Are we acting professionally on and off the field? Are we behaving professionally? Whether we're paid or not, and the vast majority of people, apart from me and some other people in sport, are not paid. And I take this time to thank everybody who's been involved in the sport for a long time and taken the sport to where it is. But to take the sport and this game to where I think it can get to, we have to start to look at professionalizing. Now, that's not me saying it's not professional and it's not good. It's me saying this is a state of mind. And the why is, what do we do, and are we doing something every day to help professionalize a sport, whatever that might be?
Okay.
And the ultimate thing I got, and this was almost to in every individual, we've just got to inspire more people to play. It's a great game. We want more people to play. So how do we inspire more people to play? And probably the other side of that is, and then how do we get people to play their part in it? Whether that be a coach, a referee, a volunteer in a club, part and parcel of social media, helping promote the sport, broadcasting and discussing the sport. What can we do to play a part? But by doing that, are we approaching it in a professional manner, which we would expect from any other sport? At the moment, we're not funded as a sport.
Yeah.
We during the closure, we managed to get some funding out of Sport England or into our sport, which was an absolute godsend, and at the time, hugely critical for the long-term success of our sport. But that approach of looking at how we professionalize what we do means we can now start to engage with government, with Sport England, Scotland and Wales, and with commercial partners. So that's the basis of why that's our vision.
So that was it. Yeah, and something I just was going to pick you up on actually was, so you haven't only just created this to share with the members of the sport, it's actually something that you want to use to promote our message, to help with funding and help, I suppose, with our image with these greater organisations, these larger organisations that help run the sport, that run sport in across the country.
I mean, this is as relevant to everybody that plays, to everybody that watches, to everybody that has a stake holding in our sport. It's, and I always talk about any sport I've been involved in, we are all merely trustees of this game. We enter it, we play it, we touch it, we're involved in it. We're honor bound to pass it on in a better condition than we found it. And this 10-year vision is part of that process of creating a professional approach in everything we do and how we do it. Whether that goes from people who broadcast, whatever it might be, every single aspect of our game. So it's a vision for British American football, not British American Football Association. So I'm trying to
it's the sport
roundest sense, and that's why I say that none of this is this is what everybody now has to do. This is a framework into which we want to operate, and the next thing is that, like, if you like, that mission statement. I'm not keen on the word necessarily, but it's the only thing I could think of. That's what it is. It's our mission. It's it's how we're going to do things, and we're going to develop a dynamic sport. We all know it is, and I think I said it was at my first AGM last year. I said, you are the best kept secret in British sport. I've been around sport for 30 years, and I knew about it, and I knew about American football because I'm a fan. But the actual what happens in British American football wasn't known because it wasn't a funded sport. It still isn't. And it wasn't on the radar of most people, senior people who work in sport in this country. That's going to change by creating the dynamic sport. And I don't just mean on the field, I mean off the field as well. It means that it's about us becoming a high-performing national governing body. Now, what that means is, looking at, do we have a vision? Do we have a long-term strategy? Do we understand what our requirements are, both on and off the field? And can we articulate that to all partners? So that high-performing governing body comes down as much to, have we got the right governance protocols in place and policies and all the, if you like, many people would call the boring stuff. Yeah. But it ensures the success. And
it's funny you say that, because
we run a business and we've got to be sustainable in the long term.
So I wrote a piece on the changes that were made to the Articles of Association, and as well as there being some bigger fundamental pieces, there were some more subtle things like chairman was changed to chair. Like all of these, like there were like vernacular things, and then even the relabeling of the different disciplines of the sport. And you say those are small things, or like that's minutiae. Those are small things, but I was actually really encouraged to see that level of detail, and it is that professionalism that you're talking about. It's like it's stuff that people would have probably overlooked before. It was like, oh, it's we got bigger fish to fry. There are bigger fish to fry, but while you're in something, sort it out properly, and then move on to the next thing and do that properly. And I always mention to a lot of our guys, we talk about BAFA a lot on our live streams, and everyone always makes a clear distinction of old BAFA versus current BAFA, and so I think for all intents and purposes, people are seeing that things are moving in the right direction in the sport, and I'm hoping that this this pays testament to that, adds a bit of meat to the bones of what people sort of understand already.
Point, and one of the things to pick up on that is it's our sport. It's not. Doesn't belong to the board and it's our sport, and that's why the whole mission statement is about it being dynamic on and off the field. It's about being high performing, and we can put measures into high performing. We can actually create we can actually create a scoreboard and see how we're doing, whether we are high performing or not. And that's important over the next 10 years to measure that success. At the end of the day, we're a sport, and we want to know who's winning. So are we winning, and are we doing the right things? But it's also that real clear statement that this is a sport for everyone, that we want everyone to participate and or perform, if that's the pathway they choose to take. They want to move on in our sport. So we need to make it accessible. It needs to be inclusive. It's got to be safe. And more importantly, this is my big thing. People got to enjoy playing it, so they come back more and more, and they tell people to come back. The best people who go to Disney tell everybody you have to go to Disney. It's the best holiday in the world. Disney don't advertise; they just create a great experience, and everybody tells everybody to go there and enjoy that experience. Yeah. But more importantly, and this is the subtle bit in this mission statement, every decision that from the chair to the board to the executive volunteer group that I have around me and everyone out there, I want us to make decisions focused on the player. What does this look like through the eyes of the player? Whether they be a 7-year-old girl putting a ball in her hand for the first time in a school, through to someone who's going out and playing for GB or competing in the Premiership. Is it focused on the player and their enjoyment and their inclusion? And they all tell people, yeah, we're having a great experience. Now, I'm sure people will tell me there's all sorts of things we can improve. Yes, we can. And we will. And we will talk about that, and we'll work that through, and we'll review all that. And again, I'll talk about that in a little bit in the strategy. But what I really want to talk about is the we wills. This is I believe this is the culture and beliefs that I want to create around our sport. And I would say rather cleverly or by good luck, it spells out the pride in our sport. It's about being progressive. We will be progressive in everything we do. That's innovative and creative. We'll be responsive, and we'll listen to our membership and our key stakeholders. We will be inclusive, because we've got to remove those barriers to playing. We've got to, how do we make sure everybody can play, on a level playing field? That doesn't mean to say that we will still have levels of success and levels of performance, but we need to create ways to include people in our sport. Probably my biggest thing around here is this being driven and doing the right things, but doing them right. And that comes back to that bit you said before about the detail in the rules or the regs, and again, the switchboard or whatever will light up very shortly with people saying, well, this regulation doesn't work and that doesn't work. Yeah, there's probably loads of them that do or they don't. But it's also about being player focused, doing things right and doing the right things. But then what we have to look at is, how do we, as a result of all that, create the most enjoyable play experience for everybody?
Right.
And that's what sport is. Guys who play in Premier League soccer and girls who play in the Women's Super League in soccer, they do it because they enjoy it. And we create the experience so that it's enjoyable, and everybody sees that it's enjoyable and wants to be a part of it.
And just quickly on this, so you've got this 10-year plan, and I'm looking forward. Obviously, the next slide's got quite a lot of the next level of detail in. Who holds you accountable to this stuff, Pete, as the CEO? Like, who do you see as your the people that are who you on the hook to, sort of thing?
Really simple. The chair, Nicole, and the board. I'm accountable to them on a daily basis. They are my my employers. So I am accountable to the board. I think one of the things that attracted me to this role, I'd sort of semi-retired, I'd left the FA, I was doing some consultancy and some other work, and lots of other governing bodies I'd looked at and worked with and done some work with them and advice and guidance. Nothing attracted me to someone going, oh, why don't you come and do this, and why don't you come and do that? Because all those sports were 150 years old or 100 years old with long-standing governance and challenges, and this was just fresh and really dynamic, and Nicole as the chair just really sold it, and she's been instrumental in my view in taking that, I think you would call it the old BAFA, and bringing it to the new BAFA. And then you'll see as we've already started to develop the board, there'll be some announcements shortly of new and additional board members. And I think people then start to understand, yeah, that's professionalizing our game at board level.
Yeah.
And that will then filter down and through into each clubs, into whether it's university football or whether it's flag or women's. Or this is about driving the behaviours and culture in our sport to be professional and inspirational.
Cool. Right, let's move on to the next one. Because
this is
right, so your key objectives.
Apologies, it's a bit weird. I was trying to get it on one slide for you, so
yeah, it's all right. Just take it.
I guess
section by section.
I guess this is just if you like, we've got the why and the how, and that sort of culture and beliefs. This essentially is the what I heard is this is what we need to do. And again, this was me listening to a huge amount of people and trying to distill this down to, this is still, if you look at that, there's 5 in each. There's still 20 big pieces of work to do here over the next 10 years, and they'll all need doing at some point in the next 6 to 8 months. So there's a lot to do, and that's one of the reasons why I put a plea out at the AGM, and I'll do the same this evening. We're a volunteer organisation apart from myself, and initially, until we get into a position like other sports where they're funded by government, we're going to be a member organisation. So its members can contribute and help us design and develop these strategies. And there's no surprise in any of these, really. They're really clear that I put them into 4 key areas. There's playing and participating. There's the places where we play, essentially our clubs. How everybody can then play their part and what that means. And then ultimately there's the playing pathway. This would be the same at any sport in this country. These are the very similar strategic pillars that I would have worked at when I was at the FA, when I was working with cricket, when I've worked with any number of governing bodies around Europe and around the world. Essentially, these are the key participation areas. So we've got to review, what is our flag strategy? We've got a great, 2028 LA flag football could be in the Olympics, and there's a lot of lobbying we're doing currently with the NFL and with others to do that. Now, flag football in an Olympic, we'll know 7 years out. The shot in the arm for that, and the opportunity in Britain particularly opens up your Olympic sport funding, resource, support.
Yeah.
How do you select it? But it's a dynamic, but it's going to be the way we get a ball in every kid's hand. The kids aren't going to put a helmet and pads on and play. They're going to have flag football is going to be the entry level program that we've just. And I talk about this all the time. It's about getting a ball or a racket or a bat or whatever sport it is. If you put that in a kid's hand really early, you give them a great experience. Yeah. And you wrap around that everything that's professional and the right thing to do and doing things right. You've got them forever. Yeah.
So this is one of at the top of the show, and I said there was a couple of things I wanted to sort of resurface and get you to sort of talk through. And that was one of the things that really stuck with me when we spoke. And you said, I want to. The way that we need to look at the sport is I want to be able to put the ball in the hands of a child, and they can keep that ball in their hands, and they can go in whichever direction they want as they get older, and they can choose to stay in flag or go kitted, and there is facilitation, something for them, and they can play for as long as they want to whatever degree, whether that is all the way up to representing the country. Yeah. I think it's. I think when most people think about Britball and BAFA and like most people, all they ever focus on is the kitted adult league, which you probably the flagship is where the bulk of the membership is, but that doesn't represent how we grow the sport. And I really like the idea that thinking behind it. And I suppose you're right. It's the same for any sport though, isn't it? It's, they need to, get kids involved and get them to enjoy it.
It's interesting. I've worked in sports that have been around for 150 years, and at times in that past, they'd lost sight of that. They'd lost sight of putting a cricket bat in a kid's hand. They'd lost sight of it. It just, they'll always play cricket, or they'll always play football. Or we're going to do girls' football. Well, we'll just do it the same as boys' football. That's ludicrous. you've got to look at the player and what they need and what they want, and how you wrap the experience around them and tailor it for what they require and what they need and the lens through which they look. And that's important.
And had a couple of comments.
That's the same. That's the same for the women's strategy. Yeah, we've got to look at what does that look like, and how do we develop that, and how do we do that over 10 years? Clearly, the first thing I saw when I look at the players that were a predominantly male sport. Well, that's not. And I talk about being inclusive. Well, therefore, there's 50% of the population we're not working with. So we have to address that, and we should address that. And how do we then make it enjoyable? How do we make it safe? How do we make it the right thing to do? Again, this strategy will start to develop that. In terms of our national football, in our leagues, and as you say, you called it, that's the flagship of what we do. Well, is it the right? Is it structured right? We have to travel this sort of distances. Well, is that going to maintain and be player focused and get people to continue to do that over a long period? Now, there's probably no magic dust to sprinkle on that, but how do we ensure that we develop that and we keep the players we've got? We can bring some of the players back who are already in different countries. How do we create a real pathway and ultimately, how do we create a spectacle which people? I think I'll work out 8 million eyeballs on the NFL. I don't want a percentage of them watching British American football. How do we create a spectacle that does that, and what does that look like? And that's a big piece of content to do that. But the absolute focus of doing that is how do we create a clear distinction between the people who want to play and participate and really enjoy their sport at a local level and have done it for years and will continue to do it, and how do they attract more people to do that? Against, right, I want to play high level. This is what I want to do. I'm happy to travel 300 or 400 miles to a game, and there's a balance there between that rather than making everybody do the same.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Actually, what you have to look at is, I can only stop those distances being traveled when we've got more clubs, and then we've got to look at the areas, and then this comes back to this whole point of being insightful in everything we do. What do we look like now, and what do we want it to look like? And then you fill the gaps in on the way through. Yeah. That's all strategy is where are we now? Where do we want to be?
Yeah. And how we're going to get there. Yeah.
And these areas here, schools, colleges and youth, that's absolutely critical. And by the way, I normally present this in a circle, so that there's no one seeing this going, oh, flag's more important than women.
Yeah. It's not a ranked thing. Yeah, I get you.
Right, I normally present it in a circle, so there's absolutely no, but it was just
we've had a few. I'm just going to bring up a couple of comments because in that last bit there was a few comments that were coming through and even before you were saying stuff. So Tony said most people can play rugby, soccer, and it doesn't cost as much as American football, so we don't attract young athletes. And that was prior to you mentioning about flag, which I think is a lovely. Well, and do you know what? I would even go as far to say frisbee as well, like the frisbee football version. That's even easier, right? You just need a frisbee and you can play it. It's like netball. Yeah. But yeah, it's about
that's one of the key pointers. How do you put a ball in kids' hands, and how do you what's our equivalent of jumpers for goalposts? What's the equivalent of that? What's the easiest way that we can get people to play, fall in love with it, create that and now I want to stay in it, and as you said, I fancy doing that now, and I've got some skills. I can do that. I can play this game. It's even in the last looking at the last DCMS returning back to play, even the people in the public health department who were trying to convince to say our sport is safe, all they talk about is, I've seen American football, and all they see is the NFL.
Yeah. I always get asked, you play the NFL, don't you? That's what they say
on the sport. So they think everybody does that and that scale. Yeah. And they immediately say, "Oh, I've seen it. You've got hundreds of people on the sideline." No, we don't. Yeah. And that's the principle, and we have to break that down. And we have to change that.
Cool. And then Ian's popped up and said, "Flag costs next to nothing. Our monthly fees for youth players are cheaper than many other local sports. Through hard work, careful planning and budgeting, all players are provided with kit to play. The real difficulty is driving interest through exposure to our sport in the schools." Now, so I think that's sort of in reaction to Tony's prior statement. And then another person, Gary, has gone on from that and said, schools are very dodgy depending on area when it comes to contact sports. Although the flag version isn't contact. We did it once, and the headmaster nearly had a heart attack and killed off a possible inter-schools rugby tournament, and that's going back 30 years ago. Can only imagine what state it would be like now. So yeah, so how like what is the, because I can see that sort of next on this is schools. How do you approach schools that have got those issues? You know, they don't have a storeroom where they can store loads of kit and helmets and pads. Like that, like, so you're looking at a very small group of, if they are going to do kitted, but surely the plan is to go through the non-kitted version of the sport. Right?
Yeah. So in essence, I mean, we have head teachers in this country now who are getting really scared about playing. You know, and this is in the traditional rugby playing schools. They're now looking at going, that's, you know, I can see. I don't fancy getting involved in that. They took at cricket with a hard ball. Potentially in some schools, that's not what we want to do. Or we haven't got the facility. So we have to look at the schools, and I think it was Ian who was saying the schools is the critical part, but do not look, and this is probably 30 years of experience of working in sport, where you get successful in growing a sport, schools are where the kids are, right? So we have to include them. So we have to create an environment which is safe, enjoyable. They have great experience. They get a ball, they recognize a sport, they develop some skills, and they have a great time. And this is where then you cannot do the schools and the colleges and without the club system. And that's where the element, it's got to join together. We can't have a schools program separate to a club development program. The two have to be intertwined. There's very little point in us creating a whole raft of programs, and other sports do it. They just get their sport in schools. If the clubs in the local area to it and either are not ready for it or we don't have any, where the kids going to go? Now, there'll be some other exceptions where we can create a nucleus in a school and in and around a school, either an after-school club. But the element, and there's a couple of great examples of in Chester, for instance, where we've got an NFL flag program up there. There's almost 30 schools satellite to the club playing programs, and an element, not all of them by any means, but a large number of them come to the club, and that's about doing it in conjunction with the club. And the big part of the schools, colleges, and that's why the youth strategy is linked to it. That's the youth across schools, clubs, and or other environments where we have young people together. That may be youth clubs or different types of environments. But ultimately, we have to get our clubs prepared and ready, and we've got many of them where we develop that link between the schools and the clubs, and that's the secret, if you like. Yeah, making sure those clubs and schools are, you know, almost in it.
And what you're giving them is that we had a big chat last night about recruitment, right? Yeah. And BAFA came up as, you know, what do BAFA do? And BAFA should do more. And I said to people, you know, what of the 60 or 50 players you've got on your squad, you know, what percentage of that are you saying BAFA are responsible for? You know, and you know, I'd say like the heavy lifting has to be done by the club, but what you're doing here is actually helping them with that by saying, look, if you go out and you link up with these schools. I provide some sort of, I suppose, running a session or something. I assume that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got this pipeline that just wasn't there before of a ridiculous amount of children in your local area interested in the sport.
And that's the important thing. All of these key objectives that I'm talking about here, that you can't do them all at different speeds, going in different directions, because they have to be done in conjunction. So, in terms of all that play and participation strategy, the biggest thing that will throw up will be, we haven't got enough coaches. There's not enough people to support the clubs and the volunteers. We haven't got enough people around to help support all this, or we're not qualified enough. So that will create a shopping list of what that looks like. Who else can help us do that? You can't be the clubs, and not only the clubs do it. So how do we get our other stakeholders, from the NFL through to other sports bodies? You know, how do we start to work with, you know, other partners who can help us deliver these programs? You know, and this is the whole part of developing the strategy with our clubs and with our schools to work out, well, who else is in the environment And there's a whole lot of sport infrastructure out there, from school games organisers in schools, from sport development teams out in different areas, to local professional football club community programs with lots of coaches engaged and employed, to deliver soccer.
Yeah.
Actually, they're crying out to deliver different things because they're doing it 12 months of the year. So they want different ideas, and how else can we work? And if we can create the compelling offer, we can work with them. And that's
so I know a bit. So you're referring to the football in the community departments of So you're saying to link up with those football in the community departments and offer a taster or full blown sessions on flag football in there as part of what they do. That's a really interesting point. I've got friends that are involved in that.
Bodies out there and organisations who've got massive infrastructures. What we've got to make sure is that we've got a vision and a purpose and a why that they buy into, because they'll have a slightly different agenda than we will as a sport.
Yeah.
But we find out what's consistent and what's relevant to both, and what those key areas are, and that's what we deliver. Yeah. And we can train their coaches, we can upgrade their coaches, and go in, and it then becomes. So this is the whole point about trying to understand the total requirement of this strategy really quite early.
Yeah.
So then I can then say, right, well, okay, so having all those volunteers and coaches, we're starting to look at, apprenticeships are a real key thing now. So how do we get apprentice coaches working in and with some of our clubs we can educate and coach them? They can work they can work for us as a governing body in the sport. They can work as coach and develop coaching in their area. And then essentially those are the play and participate and play your part are the key things, because what they then create are the shopping list of what we need to do, and potentially, so what's that going to cost? Because someone will be out there going, oh, this is going to cost millions. Well, baseball, softball are funded from the government at the moment around about £750,000 a year.
Wow. And how big are they from a member's perspective? Do you know how big their sport is at all?
Smaller than ours.
Smaller than. Oh my God! So have you got an idea of what a level of funding that you're targeting, or that you feel that will be eligible for?
I don't approach this from what amount of funding can I get. What I'm going to approach is this sport to do what it in those 5 areas, in each of those 2 areas. What does that articulate out to mean? If we want to do this properly, what does that look like? And then how attractive does that look to equity partner investment, to commercial partners, to broadcasters, to governments? And we work with the NFL, the CFL, where we've already started. But what does that look like? And it is never all just cash. There's a lot of our coach development already done and referee development done by other bodies and can support what we do. So I think that's an important aspect of we create the resource requirement, and then okay, well, where do we find that, and who can help us? How does that help us deliver what we want? Because we've got to articulate what we want to do. Not, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll cut everything down to how much money we've got. So the whole of this 10 years to have an ambition of, right, it will start small and it will grow. Yeah. And that's the whole point of this. And then what that then leads into is the places where we play. And this is really simple. We're already starting on this one, working through this with having what a proper club development strategy looks like, accrediting our clubs. We've already started the process by, here's the minimum standards to you to
the bank account thing that you were talking about.
Absolute minimum standards. This is what you have to do. Otherwise you can't register as a club, because otherwise we start the professionalization bit there of and that we'll tweak that. We'll work with people, we'll support them. We've got club matters workshops, we've got support training around COVID at the moment. We'll work around finance support, we'll work around ultimately how they write marketing plans and so on and so forth. And we can create that as a governing body from all the other resources that are around sport, and that's free to us to pass to our clubs. And that's what we're going to try to do more and more, and we will do more and more. We'll create around what's our facility plan, how do we get more access to better facilities. Now, if someone out there thinks, oh, you're going to build us a load of 3G pitches. No, we're not, but other people will, and we'll work with them to get our access to them. Ultimately, I want a national centre for British American football. Why not?
Yeah, I saw. Talk to me about that, Pete, because that jumped out at me when I first put this slide up.
Yeah.
What is that? What is it? Is it what I think it is?
Well, do you know what? It's one of those things. Having worked at this, and this is not relevant necessarily, but having worked at St George's Park when I went to the FA, you drive. Anybody's ever been there? You drive into St George's Park in the National Football Centre. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. Premier League clubs have now got facilities of the same ilk. When you drive through the gates, it just makes you, oh my God. Now, are we going to create a St George's Park for American football? No. Are we going to create something where American football can have a massive, massive base and have access to good facilities, quality facilities, both on and off the field? There are several places we could do that. And what we have to build is, well, what does that look like? And how do we share that? We've got NFL clubs come to London for the London series. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, where are they going to train and play? What that's going to look like? So that eventually will start to, the infrastructure around that will start to be developed. How can we play our part in helping develop that and then being a part of it? How can we start working with some of our colleges and universities who've got great facilities? And how do we access that? Now, initially, it might not be one place. It might be several. But ultimately, wouldn't it be great to get one place where everybody trains and plays and you can drive through the gates and see, this is British American football here, and we play our GB games and our finals. And now there's nothing in it. Most of the objectives on this slide, they're all doable. And I think, you know what, yeah. I can see that. I've almost written the plan for most of these. That one, I know, is a really big, hairy.
Yeah, it's lofty. Yeah.
It's massive. But if we don't have great ambition, well, why not?
Yeah.
You've got to have that. I want to play the Brit Ball in the Tottenham Stadium on the Friday night before the London series games on a Sunday. Why not?
Yeah.
That's what I'd love to happen. But that's going to be a while away. There'll be a lot of people who will be getting in my way before we say that. But why not have a really big goal that drives us forward every day? Cool. Putting a ball in a kid's hand, to playing a Brit Bowl at Tottenham, to having a national centre, and all of those things in and around it. But the biggest thing in that area, that Places plays, is an inclusive game for all. We are inclusive, and that's got to be our biggest, driver. We are inclusive. By gender, ethnic diversity, whether it be a disability, by social, whether it's economic ability to play. We've got to be.
How would you measure that at the moment within our sport? Because I would say, if I was, I often mention that I think the Brit Ball community, the British American football community, is very inclusive, is very welcoming, because if someone wants to get involved in my sport, I'm like, yeah, of course you can. I'll show you how to do it. And I'm not the only person that thinks like that. There's a lot of people that think like that and are trying to and are quite positive. So what for you are the goals for us in terms of inclusivity? Is it just to continue that, to make sure we don't lose it as we grow, or what's the
first thing is, and I come back to my point before about what does it look like right now?
Yeah.
What do we look like? What do our demographics look like? What does our culture look like? And let's start to understand that. And everything that you've just said, I wouldn't disagree with, but there might be some people who do disagree with that. So let's make sure that the culture, that's the norm. And people understand and can look at our sport through other lenses. I can only look through my lens. Yeah. We have to understand to look through another lens. I always go back to this, and people, I can't look through the lens of many different demographics, but I came from a council estate in Manchester, and I couldn't play cricket at the level I really wanted to play because we didn't have a car. My parents they couldn't take me to the places you needed to be.
Yeah.
They didn't go to the private school that you needed to be in the. I get that bit, and I can look through that lens. It's a long, long time ago. So as I sit here right now, I don't have that lens, so I don't really understand that, and I don't understand what it means today. So that's the change we have to create, is the lens through which we look and understand that. And I can't put a number on that, but that's the thing we have to really understand. Yes, we want to be inclusive and say the things that you just said, but do we really understand that? Do we really understand that lens through which we look? And that's cultural, and we have to be constant in that challenge all the time. And we will do that. And then the last element of this really is it's the pathway. You know, how do we get that 7-year-old girl with a ball in her hand, a long-term athlete development, to create that pathway that means she and her brothers can get through to a GB squad, into a GB camp, or where. And the success is, well, what's successful for that individual? Not success is you have to play for GB, or you have to get to an NCAA Division 1 college. It's whatever is the right thing for that individual. And how do we put? I always talk about it is it's like the pathway is almost triangular. Everyone says that you got a great big group of people at the bottom, and as you go up the pyramid, we push them up. I see it more as a cylinder. So you get the cylinder as wide as possible. Right in the middle is the player pathway. And as they get older, they grow up and they go through that pathway. What we have to do in the cylinder is make sure there's a safety net. So whenever they fall out of that pathway, because they will, either by choice or by not being good enough, or for whatever other reason, there's a reason why they don't, we're there to catch them as a sport and as a community, catch them, reassure them, maybe put them back in it at a later date because they might be a late developer, or they might come back later a better player. And that's what that long-term athlete development plan and that strategy is about, that talent support plan, making sure that as they develop as a player and as an athlete, we support them with their education, that they get the best chances they get at every opportunity. You know, because we probably go all really quite good in sport at doing what I call the technical and the tactical aspects of sport. Do we understand the psyche and the mental pressures they're under, and the social pressures they're under? And do we support them in that? And I think that's a really big thing. So, and then within that, there's this, you know, obviously the links with CFL and NFL, they're key. And we'll develop those as we build that relationship with both NFL and CFL. And looking at how do we develop more academies. We've got 2, you know, hugely successful academies at the moment. You know, they're starting to do.
How many academies could we have?
You know, that's a good point. And there's a little bit of me one goes, well, what's the number? There's got to be a finite number.
Yeah. Where do we saturate?
Ultimately, what we have to do is, there's a finite number based on the demand in the game and how many people want to get into our game. So as we grow the participation base, and as we grow that change, there'll be more demand for more academies. We want to try and get them geographical. I think that's important, to get some geography. So I think at the moment we've got Bristol, and we've got the NFL Academy in London. You know, you're sort of thinking there, well, you know, we've got Scotland and the North, probably. There's probably one there. But what I will say, and it'll be on record tonight, is that academy plan is going, and that whole pathway is going to be linked to a whole talent development pathway and an elite development pathway, which means you can't just set up an academy, or you can't have the name of something and stick academy on the end and mean it's an academy. There's a huge amount of investment we have to put around the player, the coaching, the coach development, the environment support, the talent support. And it's only when you've got all of those things in place, you can call yourself part of the elite development pathway or the program. So a whole lot of one of these put around that stops people just going, I'm an academy.
Yeah.
No, you might have the name academy after the, you know, but are you?
Yeah. So and there are a couple that have gotten that. I know exactly what you mean. But just on a very similar note, there's one here, a question here from Craig Barnes, and he, first of all, he says welcome and encouraging words, Pete. For those clubs who have ambitions, will there be criteria to participate in various tiers? Will clubs have to meet more stringent standards if they're driving for that top tier?
Yeah, I think, you know,
similar to your academy thing. I just sort of think,
simply, if you want to go up the pyramid, you want to go up standards, and I think it ultimately depends. And this is one of the things that's just not my choice. I've got an opinion and I've got a view, and I think what we should look to do, But the game has to consult. Well, so what do we want to look like in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
You know, what does that? As Craig just said, what does that? Is it just a straight pyramid, and is it you go up? There's elements of that might not be the ideal way to do it, but we need to discuss that and go. So how do you, as a club, become the next tier up? Then it's not just necessarily ultimately through ticking boxes. And I don't want that to be part of the process. There'll be an element of that. That's off field. Have you got the right facilities? Have you got some real clear indicators that you can meet? But then, do you meet the playing standards?
Yeah.
That's simply, that will be how you'll have to judge that. And how do we create the measures? And that's what I want to talk about. That National Football League strategy group, I want to bring in some diverse opinions and views and challenges. And having been involved in both football and cricket in driving and creating top tier, I think Craig used the word, or higher tiers. How do you get from where you are currently to go to that new structure? And that's about debate and consultation and agreement. And we'll be starting that we're starting it now. So we're starting that process now, and we'll start to get that understanding about what that might look like.
But then, so on that, right? So that, like, I would say that one of the things that I felt has hindered the development of the sport is that they try to be all things for all people all the time, and there surely has to be a point where we say, well, this is, I speak to people, I know what everyone's saying, but I'm going 80-20 here. Like, I'm going with what I think drives, the direction of the success of the sport in the direction that I want it to. Is some of this stuff a result of, or reflective of that type of approach? Like, because one of the things I thought, like, when we knew there was a CEO coming in, I was like, well, hopefully we get rid of this death by community, or like the vanilla output, so we someone comes up with a plan, and then by the time it's been run through the ringer of everyone, it's a vanilla version of what the original idea was, and it just doesn't have the impact. So, like, how have you sort of approached that?
Any chief exec of any organization or any business listens to its consumers, its customers, its members, and it gets a broad view. And I've been doing that over the last 12 months. That's whether people I've been speaking to have realized that, but that's what I'm doing and taking on board and creating this understanding. And ultimately, my job, and I'll be paid to do this, is to make a decision. I'm going to lead the organization, and I'm going to ultimately come up with there's a consideration, and you could have 3 or 4 ideas. Conceivably, you might have more. From what you just said, you could have, you've got 100 different opinions, but broadly, you'll end up with 2 or 3 key ways you could do something, and that's what you look at, and that's what you review. But ultimately, my job is based on this whole strategy. I'll make some decisions. Now, I might not. What I will say to everybody tonight, I will strive, and I will do everything to make the right decisions for the sport against this vision and this strategy. They won't always be popular decisions with everybody. I totally get that, but I'll be doing it for the sport, to professionalize the sport and inspire more people to play and play a part. It will come back to that, and it will be about being a high performing governing body, creating a dynamic sport, and being player focused and inclusive. And that's what the decisions I will make, and I'll stand by them, and I'll be able to defend them. And I totally accept that not everybody will agree with them ultimately. And I get that. I'm a member of a lot of organisations, and I don't agree with every decision that's made.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I can explain the why and the rationale. That's what my job is to do. And essentially that's what these key pillars are underneath this thing is to make sure that all of those things, and the one I pick out on here is, yes, we'll have a financial. Do you want to just nip on to the next slide? I think it's just. Sorry, Steve. Sorry. And this is if you like, this is going to be some of the hows and the whats we're going to do to make this happen. And I call the key pillars the sort of is having a financial or commercial plan to make whatever structure and whatever decisions we make sustainable and the right ones. And that's what it'll be. It'll be about having partnerships and working with people to create and do the right things and do things right. It'll put digital engagement and communications at the heart of everything we do. I'd like to think that I've been able to communicate with the community over the last 12 months. Could I do more? Probably, but we'll continue to do that. And I want to put comms and our messaging out at the heart of everything we do, and that with digitally more than anything. But what I also want to do is do more of what we did at the AGM and do some question and answer sessions after set pieces, if you like, so we can talk about very specific things around whether it be national programme or whether it be women's football or whether it be flag, and we'll do a lot of setups like that, so where people can have that. I'm going to be there. It's going to be Q&A. Send the questions in, and we're going to do a lot more of that. But the biggest thing around these pillars is having the right governance structure and making sure that what we create is massive engagement around the events and experience that we offer. And that will be about, so making those decisions of what we look like in 3, 4, 5 years time might be different, because I want that to be an event or an experience or a larger scale impact of what we do. So all these things will be considered in the final decision, not, yes, I am going to consult widely. Ultimately, I'll make a decision.
Yeah.
And the board will ratify that. It won't just be mine. It'll be mine with a group of people, but the board will ratify that.
Yeah.
And that's how governance works. But what I will say, and this is just for everybody's, I've got a playbook for all the groups I'm going to bring together to write these strategies. Whether this is a coach development strategy, a referee strategy, or a flag or a women's strategy, whatever it might be, it will be set out to create the impact we need, both from a participation, from a monetary, and from a social impact. It'll have to make an impact. I'll be strenuously looking at people going, don't do what you've always done, because you'll get what you've always got.
Yeah.
It'll be about continual improvement once you've started it. It'll be about how do we influence through what we do, our key partners and our key stakeholders, and how do we get them to buy into what we do. That inclusivity and accessibility will be at the heart of every strategy. And that the big thing about, are you inspiring people to and creating more opportunities and more of the right opportunities? And probably all fundamentally based on, have we got the insight and evidence of why we're going to do something? If someone says, what we should be doing is this, okay, why? Well, because I think so.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I understand that, and it's great to have a strong opinion, but what's the evidence and the insight and the why behind that?
Yeah.
Whether that be financial, social impact, participation levels, driving, what's the evidence behind that?
Yeah.
And as long as we've got
you can make more sort of data-driven decisions.
Have a debate all day long about, what's the right way to do it. But ultimately, there'll be a decision based on evidence and impact. And every decision we'll make in every one of these strategies will be based on that playbook. And
when are you looking to get that, to have that ready and to get to a state to share?
We're underway, to be fair, Steve. We're underway now. There's been some great meetings already. The flag and the women's strategy are underway. They started the conversations around what we're doing in coaching and refereeing. I'll be looking to create a few new roles and be putting out there some requests for volunteers. And what I would say, and anybody's out there and you think what you've heard tonight is great and you want to be a part of it, Pete, I disagree with everything, but here's why, and I think I can help you change direction in some of these things you've been saying, or I can contribute to making sure you get it right. I want to hear from you. But since the AGM, when I put out anybody want to come and help, absolutely phenomenal response from the community of people saying, I can help you do that. I can't give hours and hours and hours every week, but this is what I do in my day job, and I can probably help you do that. Brilliant, because volunteering in sport, I don't know if it's like, well, I know what it's like in American football, but my local cricket club, there's 3 blokes there run a very big business, essentially. Yeah. And they cut the grass, they sort the changing rooms out, they run the club, they run the bar and a club and a social club. And they always wonder why they're under pressure. Well, there's only 3 of them. Yeah. If you actually get a few more people in and help out, it makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, and this was something I wanted to discuss with you, which we said was how, because this same thing exists actually for us at Gridiron Hub, but more importantly for every single club out there. What advice do you have on how to attract and also motivate people who are working in a volunteer capacity for you? Like, how do you approach that? Because I've got my own ideas, but I sort of
there's a few different things. I use a couple of different ideas of look at the skill. Does everybody know what skills and experience they have in their club and in their team?
Mm-hmm.
What does everybody do? Do you know? Yes, you know they come and turn up and train and practice, and they wide receiver or their safety or their, you know that. But what do they do? And more importantly, what do the parents of your youngsters do? What do the families do? What's the connectivity? Before you start going out just trying to get anybody you don't know to come and help you, what do you do with the people you do know?
Yep.
I also say to any club out there, if you say haven't got enough volunteers, and I totally understand that, by the way, and it is, as you say, it's an age-old problem, and it's getting more and more difficult. But when I can fill a bus with 50 people, that's going to be a while at the moment, but when I can fill a bus with 50 people and I drive to your football club, I've got 50 people here. What are they going to do? Oh, well, they're going to help. What are they going to do?
Yeah. Can
you define the roles that all these people that you've asked for can do? And that's important. And it's going to be as simple as, I just want someone for an hour a week to be able to do the finances. I want someone for an hour a week to be able to do and help us with our social media, or whatever the specifics are. Define them and almost write the and one of the things that we're going to be doing as part of the volunteering strategy is creating role profiles and the things that most clubs will need and do, and what does that look like, and put a defined number of hours. Because if I ask most people, and you think about your average volunteer sports club, if the advert said something like, can we get 20 odd hours a week of your time for nothing, probably more at weekends and in the evenings as much as anything, impinge on your family time every day and every evening. We're not going to pay you, obviously, and you're going to do it for the next 25 years because we're not going to go out doing it. There's not going to be a massive queue applying for something like that. So it's about turning that around and going, so how do we inspire people to play their part? Small chunks, easy things they can recognize, things they know they can do. So articulate what they can do, and more importantly, what it is they're contributing to. And I've seen tons of it on social media. People who've got some of our social media is magnificent. That's someone who knows what they're doing. And by the way, I'm pinching ideas, by the way, everybody, all the time from what I see.
That's what it's there for.
But then there's that recruitment piece. So once you've inspired them to come in, you've got to recruit more of them, and you've got to recruit the right levels. And so look internally before you start looking, but then look in your community. There's people in communities who are quite often really happy to put their hand up if they're asked.
Yeah.
You ask the right people. Do you have, and I always look at it is, talk to the people who've got nothing to do with your world, because they'll look at it through a different lens and they'll add something that you can't add. And then your job is to recruit them in, and doesn't mean they come in and they're suddenly in charge of the youth team and you're doing a coaching to be, you're referring.
Yeah. Give them the keys to everything.
I want you to do this. And then this is the big part of what I'm going to do from a central point of view is create the training and support to those volunteers to give them the tools they need and the knowledge and the experience they need, because that retains them. Because the retention is down to, come and volunteer, dump a load of stuff on them, and then you wonder why they walk away.
Yeah. Well, and
give them the tools to do the job and train them and develop them to do it. And then probably my biggest thing, I've just seen the thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you why he said that in a second.
But one of the big things is I don't think we do it. And I tried to do it. Do I do it enough? Because I'm not seeing, just say thank you. And I say it tonight to anybody out there. Thank you for everything you have done. And more importantly, thank you for everything you are doing through what is now a really tough time, both nationally for us but locally for the clubs and coming back to play. Because there's one thing that's going to be, it's going to be tough. When we start coming back to play, there's going to be a lot we're all going to need to do. And I'm really conscious of that from centrally going, right, okay, everybody, the taps are on, we can play, and here you go. That's going to be, we've got to be football ready. We've got to be administratively ready. We've got to be structurally ready to come back. And that's part of this, getting a structure. And, you know, and then the final thing is amplify what you do. Tell people what you do. People like to be associated with good things and successful things. And hopefully everybody would attract and be inspired by what.
So really, I was making notes, Pete, and Tommy has just said really great insight on attracting volunteers. Thanks. I don't know why I've been thanked. I didn't do anything, but I'm going to distill this down and actually create some social media posts from it. You know, saying this is what Pete says, sort of thing. And because I think you've put some really good points there together. One of the things that the reason why Will chipped in with. Sounds like you work for Gridiron Hub. So one of the things that because I don't have a football club, you know, I don't have a membership or anything. So slightly different, you know, and the same sort of for your organisation. It's we don't have that pool to sort of tap into. And so I felt like when someone shows that they do want to start doing something with us, I will share with them like our vision, our plan. Like I've got a vision for Gridiron Hub. I've got like a 3-5 year vision, and I know exactly what I want us to do, what I want us to go into. I share with them, you know, how we're going to get there, and you know what I think it's going to look like, and that it sometimes is enough to inspire people to stay. And I think football clubs can do the same, you know, as well as the great things you outlined. I think if you share your aspirations with individuals, they can feel inspired to be part of that aspiration. So when you do win your Brit Bowl or get your I don't know, get your promotion to Div 1, whatever it is that you've aspired to do, a longer term goal, these people feel that they're part of it because they were there when you first set it out. So that's, you know, that's sort of I suppose another thing I'd sort of add to it, but that's certainly thing I really leverage on. To keep the guys motivated, and yeah, all important thing you said there was thanks. I'm constantly thanking everyone, almost to the point of apologizing to them at times, because I am, you know, you grateful for people's input and the fact that they are taking their time to do it. So yeah, I think you've had some really good points there, Pete. We have gone over our hour, which we didn't think we were going to.
I feel like an hour and 10 minutes, that's for sure. So.
No, I know. Yeah, it does fly by, but you know, I think it's sort of pertinent to you know, to wrap up here. And I just want to obviously thank you for coming on. But is there anything that you wanted to sort of, any sort of parting words or anything that you wanted to sort of say? I know you got the volunteer thing, but
people, you know, and I'm a bit of a reflective. If I was to see something like that tonight, I'd be think about it all night, and then tomorrow morning, oh, you know what? You know, if they into yourself or directly into me, if there's something that they want to contribute.
How do they get hold of you, Pete? What medium do they use?
Simply, if you go at pete.ackerley@britishamericanfootball.org. I can't say I'm going to respond to it immediately, but that's fine.
You're pretty good. I think you're pretty good at responding to emails.
And you know, or if it comes into you and you want to collate things, I don't mind which way it is. It's
yeah. Of course, if anyone's and that's fine. If anyone does want to contact us, I mean, we what if someone wanted to get in touch? Would it be pertinent for someone to maybe use your social media channels to message? Would that get through to you, or is it best to go more direct?
Either way, you could go into the social media channels and/or come to me. My email is all over all the platforms. So as I might not be able to do it and respond to it immediately, but you know, happy to do that. But I think from my point of view, and I got a bit of an ask to you, I guess. So, you know, it'd be interesting for you, and when you're doing your bits, it's so there's the vision. You're part of British American football. What are you going to do as part of your vision and your strategy to professionalize your part of the game and inspire more people to play a part? Because that's the crux of this is.
I mean,
what bit do you buy into, and how can you contribute to?
Yeah, so we're looking at. So I can share a little bit of what we're looking to do. So essentially, Gridiron Hub is we're actually going to be changing our name soon. I'm not going to say the new name, but we got a new name and a new brand to roll out. But what we're going to be doing is actually providing
brand as well, so it'll be out soon. New brand.
Yeah, I know. I've heard of that as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll coincide and do it together. But so the way that I want to contribute. So we're looking at offering various like IT support services that help people run a club. So things from like running a website, taking subs off of people, people registering, to the club, all the way to like even like somewhere to store your game film. All these different services we're looking to add on and offer to organizations. And the reason we're changing the name of the brand is because it won't just be for American football. But what we will do is offer, because of I want to grow the game of American football, I want to give back to it, and I chose to go this route to do so. We will be offering it like for free for American football clubs in the UK, and then once we go into a paid model, it will be like a hugely reduced compared to what another sport would pay for it. But that's I mean, I can't go into too much detail, but one of the things we're looking at doing is like helping. So it's funny because you were talking about like the pathways of getting players to the NFL. That's another thing we want to help players with, like creating an online profile that you can share with a team in the US, a high school coach, and it shows all of what's good about you in one place, and it's online, they can go to it, but it's linked to what you're doing. So let's say, for example, you played for the London Warriors. Well, the London Warriors, as they play their games and they capture their stats, those stats that are relevant to you will attribute to your profile automatically. So we're looking at basically creating this huge data engine that helps the individuals push themselves and promote themselves. And if they wanted to promote themselves, they could just do it because, like me, for example, I'm way past my best playing days. But it'd be all like if I was able to look back and see every single game I played and like the game reports for it and all that sort of stuff. That's what we're looking to do, is sort of capture all of the any related information for any game, and then link it to the players that are relevant to them. So that's sort of what Gridiron Hub is turning into, and how that gives back to the sport is I'm hoping that it brings more people to the sport, but also gives better pathways to individual players. And then, like I said, stands up or makes things easier to go to market for people who are trying to run a club, because they know football really well and they're really good with people, but they have no idea how to set up a website, which is quite a reasonable thing. And what we want to try and do is give them easy building blocks to be able to do that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's what we're looking at doing. But yeah, it will be incremental, and it's very similar story to you, Pete. I'm looking at getting it to a stage, so I'm trying to put everything in ship shape now. Then I can approach investors and get hopefully money that can then accelerate the plan and get us there sooner. So yeah, that's what we're looking to do to help the sport.
Alrighty. If there's no further questions, I'm realizing what time it is. So I'm very conscious it's been a hell of a long day already, but I enjoyed it very much. Hopefully, but if there's other things that people want to contribute or comment upon, as we said, get those in as and when.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, but I'll let you know, Pete, if anyone shares anything, and if there's anything you want to respond to, that'd be great. But yeah, thank you again for your time. Really appreciated it.
Thank you out there. Thank you for all you do, and hopefully we'll be playing some football soon in 2021.
Yeah, I look forward to it, mate.
Everything crossed. All right, my friend.
All the best. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.